our ribosome sections of our organelles. So ribosomes, very, very small and not really membrane bound. Okay, some of these other organelles we're going to look at are contained in a membrane, like the nucleus we just talked about. So no membrane, I would jot that down. And it's made up of two subunits. Usually you see a ribosome kind of looking like, I don't know, two little circles next to each other. And so those are the two subunits we're talking about. We'll look at that a little bit more in detail here. All right, so these guys have a very important job. They make all the proteins in all living things, okay? The wild thing is that you can give a ribosome in another animal a strand of DNA from any other animal, and it will make that protein. So, or plant. So that's pretty cool stuff. An example of that is we're going to do this bacterial transformation lab where we put the proteins, the gene from a jellyfish for a protein that glows. Well, bacteria's ribosomes could still make it even though the jellyfish is a eukaryote. So that's pretty cool. That's some high-end biology stuff where, if we could just have cells make the things we need through genetic engineering, that's sort of the next revolution we may have in manufacturing and chemical biochemistry. All right, so making different proteins. Their picture's much better than mine, okay? Ribosomes are tough to see, probably impossible to see with a high school light microscope. They're just really tiny. So they sort of come in two different types, okay? Free ribosomes are kind of floating out in the middle of the cytosol or cytoplasm. Bound ribosomes are sort of attached to a membrane, and we saw those on the surface of the nucleus in the last video I did. But you're also going to see those sort of like pepper on the endoplasmic reticulum because, well, we'll talk about why later. Okay, so make sure you know the difference between the free and the bound. All right, let's just talk about the subunits. You would never have to memorize this, but that large subunit that kind of looks like this, it's not that big. They're hard to see because they're only made of 45 individual proteins. And that small one is made of 23 proteins. Now they do have some RNA in them, okay? And it's called rRNA, and that little r, that stands for ribosome. Okay, the little r stands for ribosome. rRNA. It's always a tongue twister for me. Oh yeah, thank you. So these things here are subunits. And I'm under my camera again. All right, I just love doing this, like pointing to things on my video. There's the small subunit. There's the large subunit. All right, guys, got your drawings done? Thank you. I'll never ask you how many proteins or RNAs or anything like that. All right, where are they at? Okay, we already kind of went over this, but there's free, talked about that briefly, and membrane bounds, okay? So their location follows what their job is. There's some proteins we just want to kind of float around and use them in the cytoplasm, okay? So free, think of free floating, Okay, so we may have a cell, and the free ones are just sort of out there. All right, the membrane-bound ones, these are proteins that are exported from the cell. Okay, so you may have a cell, nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, all the ribosomes just sort of attached to that. These will make small vesicles full of proteins that will leave the cell. And that could be for a lot of different reasons. That could be messengers, that could be different substances to sort of react to something that's happening in your body. Like if you get stung by a bee, your cells are going to make something called histamine that's going to tell the other cells to start breaking down that bee venom. If you're injured, there'll be substances released that cause the local tissue to swell up. More fluid brings more white blood cells, more repair. So all sorts of neurotransmitters, okay? There's the possibilities are huge. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You said earlier that ribosomes have no membrane, but they can still be membrane bound.
Okay, so yeah, that's a really let's clear that up. So a ribosome itself, let me sorry here, I'm trying to delete everything. A ribosome itself, that has no membrane. But if I stick it like a Post-it note, if this ribosome is like a little Post-it note, and I stick it to some other organelle, it's membrane bound, but it's membraneless. Okay? So think of membrane bound ribosomes like a Post-it note that's stuck to another organelle, and they could be stuck to a lot of different ones. Good question. Okay, so this doesn't have a membrane, but it's stuck to a membrane. All right. Thanks for bringing that question to my attention, because I'm really focused on what's going on over here. So just yell at me if you have another question.